What is going on, Sales Dev Squad? Thanks so much for tuning in to another episode of the Sales Dev Squad podcast. We got a super special guest for you today, Mr. Bryan Whittington. He just coined the term right before we hit record here, the Forrest Gump of careers. Super excited to have him share a little bit more about his experience as a sales trainer for Sandler Training for over 10 years and has held many different titles ranging from real estate agent to pilot. Was also a guest on his podcast as well. Bryan, thank you so much for making the time today. How are you?
I'm awesome. Excited to be here, Mateo. We were talking beforehand. Mateo is the real deal, right? Not only is he living this out, he's getting content out to help the community at large. And then he got Chris Walker on the line, and Chris Walker won't even return my message or LinkedIn message. And there Mateo got it. So you talk about. He knows what he's doing. So thanks for having me on, Mateo. I'm not even worthy.
No, you are definitely a worthy candidate, Bryan. I saw that you were doing quite a bit of different stuff before you got into the sales training space. Do you mind just kind of giving us a quick overview of how you kind of got here?
Yeah. So back in the old days, whenever I had to go uphill, school hill both ways, my mother was in sales, retail sales, and I ended up going down that path, and it hit me all of a sudden that, holy cow, this is the rest of my life for the rest of my life. I'm going to make 50, 60 grand, working nights, weekends, forget this. So then I ended up going to school because I never thought I'd want to go to school. And then, you have the school bills like you were showing on your LinkedIn the other day, right? You have those suckers that coming at you. But I did it to become a pilot, right? So I wanted to travel the world, become a pilot, did that, unfortunately got sick. But as I was flying in the military, it was part-time through the Air National Guard. I picked up a book called The E-Myth. I'm not sure if you've ever read it, Michael Gerber's The E-Myth. And I just started falling in love with entrepreneurship. And so that's really what started me off back in 2001-ish, 2002, read that. And that launched me into this idea of, oh my gosh, I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to be a business owner. So from there, I started messing around with it. 2002, we started doing real estate, ran into another guy. He's since passed away, Dan Kennedy, who started marketing. So this is back pre-internet days, or I guess the internet was around back then, but pre all of this technology. And we started putting systems and processes together. And so we did that in real estate. That blew up and ate. And then that's what led me to Sandler, because I figured, my gosh, if I would have known how to sell better, I could have probably pushed my way through this. And one thing back in the Wayback Machine, whenever I was a flight instructor, one thing that I learned, and what I appreciate about what you're doing here, Mateo, is to learn something, teach it. Because if you're able to teach it and get people to understand that, you truly know the content, and people have just ask you the most off the wall questions. And so it forces you to think through things differently. And so from that 1999, 2000, whenever I started flight training, that's where I started to learn, wait a second, if I really want to learn something, I want to teach it. That's what led me to Sandler and what led me here. So long story to your short question.
That's awesome, Bryan. I guess in your opinion, do you feel like anyone can be a teacher, or does it take a specific type of personality or person to be a good teacher, or can anyone literally be a good teacher out there?
That's a loaded question. So I'll answer that this way. I am a horrible teacher because I do not have patience. I am one of the most impatient people in the world, and I go too quickly. I bottom line it. I'm just really super type A, unfortunately. So because of that, I really have to be intentional. So can anybody teach? I'd say you can do it, but maybe not with excellence. However, that said, if you're a BDR, if you're an SDR, if you're a leader, if you're a manager, if you're a coach, mentor, trainer, guess what? You're a teacher. Because if you think of this, and I don't have a book anymore, but it was a little book about this thick, written by the government, and it said this: somebody has learned when their behavior has changed. Isn't that what we do? from a sales perspective, we need to get them to change their behavior of status quo of what they're doing today. From a manager, from a leader, from any direction that you go, what we're doing is getting people to change their behavior. So if that's the definition of teaching, then all of us likely listening to this podcast are teachers. It's just how well do you do it? And I'm suggesting I'm probably not as good as I ought to be because I don't have the patience.
Interesting. All right. So it seems like sellers are sort of natural educators because they're always tasked with just trying to get people to think differently, huh?
Yeah. And so think about what's the best way to learn? Or I guess better said is what's the best way to teach? And I would say even to what you're likely doing on a day-to-day basis is taking that and applying it to their world. So what I just did to you ask the question and you use that Socratic form of teaching. So, and Sandler teaches it, you reverse, you ask the question. Chris Voss, label, empathize, right? All of these things, there's nothing new under the sun. It's just, I think over the years, as you get more and more experience, you just learn how to pull all of these pieces together and you have all of this massive toolbox and you know when to use what and when to leverage multiple tools together at the same time. So yeah, it's really, I think it's not easy, but it's kind of that simple and straightforward.
I really love that you spent a good majority of your career in the sales training space, specifically with Sandler training for over 10 years. If you haven't heard of that book is amazing and one of the best sales methodologies. What did you learn from being in the space for so long?
Yeah, so a couple of things off of that. The one thing that kept me around is because I loved helping entrepreneurs, right? That's the mission of our company, EBS Growth, is to help entrepreneurs to positively impact community. Because my belief is that entrepreneurship is one of the most positively impactful entities on community. So I really viewed my work at Sandler is helping small, mid-sized companies, those leaders and owners, to do better. And I also look at, I grew up, my dad's a truck driver, my mother's in retail. I kind of grew up out of not a lot. I didn't want for food or anything, so don't mishear me. I was like not a wine story, but I didn't have a lot. And because of sales, it gives you such freedom. It's such a low barrier to entry that you can fundamentally change your life and get whatever you want. You want to pay off your student loans. We were going back and forth on that post. Just sell more, right? These people, like, it boggles my head that salespeople are going to jump in an Uber instead of picking up the phone and talking to more people or learning how, reach out to Josh Braun or watch his stuff that he's doing, or Sean Cease or Ryan Reiser. Watch these things that just, all of this information, learn that more and execute on that. And so with Sandler, I was able to pour into people's lives and help them to win dreams. And that's why I stuck around. And I also had a guy, he's on my podcast on episode 4, a guy by the name of John Rosso, likely one of the best salespeople you've ever met. And being under his tutelage was one of the other reasons that I stuck around. I mean, it's the difference between winning and losing is slight edge. And that's what we want to work on every single day. And what I appreciate about what you're doing whenever you're working with people, it's slight edge. What's that one? Is it the pause that's going to be more effective? Do I go up in my voice or down? When do I do what? Those subtle edge, that slight edge is what allows us to win. And so being in that environment of around John Rosso and some of these other guys really taught me. And I love to grow. And that was a great environment in which to continue to learn and grow.
Ryan, so I noticed, like, we've kind of talked about this a bit before, but like in our industry, salespeople tend to not really take that extra step and, go for that slight edge, like you mentioned, and really just like own their development and training. Like, for example, we see athletes, like, they're constantly training their mind, their body. Why do you think it is that the status quo is really not to advance or just continuously sharpen that axe, so to speak?
Yeah. And I might disagree with you here a little bit because I don't think it's just sales. Unfortunately, it's ubiquitous. And here's why I say that. My biggest competitor isn't XYZ company. It's apathy. It's status quo, right? The reason that, and there's be a political statement that will get me in hot water, but the reason that there's a 1% is that 1% is the ones that are willing to learn, to grow and adjust and adjust, right? I'm in a group called Vistage, whether it's EO or Vistage or whatever peer group that you want to be in. There are so many people that love to learn, but they never implement it. They love to learn, but there's zero execution on that learning. They feel like they're working, but then they don't change. So there's those people, right? Those people will pay for learning, but I forget the statistics, something like 95% of all books purchased never go past page 5 or 20 or something weird like that. I don't know what the stat is, but nobody follows through with it, right? Everybody joins the gym, but then doesn't show up.
Yeah.
So it's all of those type of things. And unfortunately, that's across the board. So why do people do that? They get comfortable, right? Because how much you and I role played on that podcast, which I loved, right? People are so worried about how they feel that they don't act intentionally to get uncomfortable. And the only way to grow is to change and be uncomfortable. So I'd really challenge you today, if you're not asking every single day, what can I do today that's going to scare the crap out of me? And then go do that, right? And become better. Because the only difference between you today and you in 5 years is who you've met, the people that you are in, the books that you've read, right? That's it. So go be uncomfortable. Make yourself turn into who you want to be rather than dwell on what you don't have.
I love that, Bryan. I guess for anyone who's just inspired by those words, as I am, what steps can they take to start incorporating professional development in their day-to-day, if this is sort of, the first step in this journey here?
That's a good question. Now, so let me give a caveat or a suggestion first. If you start to go down this path, don't boil the ocean at once. Pick one thing. Just focus in on one thing. So if you're not doing anything today, right? And this is, I'll share my horror stories. I screwed up. I tried to do everything all at once and learn everything all at once. And you go from 0 to everything all at once and it blows up. So just pick one thing and just do a little bit. So if you're not listening to any podcast, pick one, right? Well, we're at least on one. So, right. So get a second one. We don't have windshield time anymore, right? Back in the old days, there was a guy by the name of Zig Ziglar, and he used to call it windshield university, right? So have a shower university. I have a speaker. It's a waterproof little speaker that I throw in the shower. Nice. So since I'm not commuting anymore, I'll listen to a podcast or an Audible book while I'm in the shower. So just carve out time block. We're hopefully, right, we're watching what Mateo's doing, and we watched his LinkedIn video on how to properly time block the day. Time block the time to study, because if you're not intentional about it, it can easily slip away. So focus on one thing, pick up a book that you're interested in, and get really curious about it. Time block that time to keep doing it, and just a little bit each day. That's all you want. It's the consistency, not the sprint. Don't do fits of greatness. Do long stretches of consistency, and that's, I think, the key there.
One of my buddies just got a job, and I told them, like, if you have like an hour commute and you listen to like a podcast every day, imagine like how much learning you'll get done just through your commute time alone.
That was where all my learning went down during this shutdown. My learning went down drastically, and that's where I got the speaker for the shower, and I had to be a lot more intentional about putting that time aside to learn. So 100% use that time. Because what else are you going to do? You listen to the radio and get hacked off at the news, or listen to some music. Yeah, you need a little bit about that, but do it after you learn.
Bryan, I think like we talked about this before, but like sales and entrepreneurship go hand in hand, and you've obviously been running your company for a few years now. Like, how did you sort of know you were ready to like fully commit to being an entrepreneur?
Well, so I was doing my own thing for a while, and I'd love to say that I was an overnight success. I've had a couple of failures. I had a business partner that I allowed to take me to the tune of $250,000. I had a couple of failed ventures, 2008, 2009, just about knocked me out. So, I'd love to say that, oh, you just wake up one day and know it. I had a lot of small starts and continuing to grow and grow and grow. And this would be my encouragement for you is test it out, right? So I was W-2'd, although 100% commission, I still had a W-2, so it's easier to get loans and stuff like that. So I was doing EBS as I was doing some other things. So I took the safe risk, right? Because I had 6 kids. I needed to make sure that things worked. Previous to the 6 kids, I'd start something and get whacked, right? And shut it down. So my encouragement to you is start small, start safely. Make sure that you have multiple months in the bank account before you go and do this. Or, if you're able to do it in a gig economy, especially with what's going on with LinkedIn, there's a lot of people producing content. And I mean, there's a lot of bad stuff out there. If you're putting good content out there, you can start a business like that with extremely low barrier to entry.
Mhm.
So, when's the best time? Right now. When's the next best time? Once you make sure that you have enough money saved up that you can live off of it. But if you can do 2 things at once, start right now, because um, time goes real fast.
So like how did you or when did you start to realize that like LinkedIn and content strategy and podcasts is something that's like necessary to do, I guess, as an entrepreneur?
I'm embarrassed to say this. I mean, a couple of years ago, and my challenge is I was so heads down that I didn't take advantage of it. And thankfully, I'm a guy by the name of Ryan Reisert. I've been talking about doing a podcast for 3 to 4 years, maybe 5 years. And I didn't feel as though I could do it under Sandler because content restrictions, blah, blah, blah. Then I got out of it and I got so heads down and so busy. And I was talking to Reisert on the phone and he's like, just reach out to James Bowden, right? It's so easy. And then there's what you advertise for, Anchor, right? You put that on there, and there's so much help out there. So it wasn't until I think right pre or right post pandemic that we started kicking this off, and it's a blast. I love it. And just I think listen to what Chris Walker was doing on your podcast, right? With those, once you create content, that long form like this, you can break it down, and you're learning so much as you're doing this. So you want to learn, create a podcast, right?
Yep. No, you're 100% right. I mean, I like to think of like podcasts as like a perfect way to practice like a sales interaction, right? Like asking for the meeting, like asking questions, like reading the room. Like this is like the best way to really explore yourself, find yourself, and develop like those communication sales skills.
Yeah, which tying this back to your first question, what's it take to be a good teacher? Communication skills. Where can I learn it? Having sales conversations all day long allows me to really succinctly say what it is that I do, how I do it in a way that's going to benefit you. So, yep, all ties together. Nothing new under the sun.
So Bryan, do you mind just sharing a little bit more about like what you guys specialize in over at EBS and how you help?
Yeah, sure. So again, we believe that community is benefited by great entrepreneurs. And I'm in Pittsburgh, and we have a place called CMU and University of Pittsburgh, right? So Pitt, tons of startup, super smart people. And I saw time and time again while I was at Sandler, these people start these great companies. They're ridiculously smart, and so we have this confidence whenever we're the business owner that we can do anything. So they realize quickly that they run out of time, and maybe they're better at computer programming and development of software and ideas than they are at sales. So then they go to hire salespeople. And I don't know about you, Mateo, but maybe you've seen this before. Even bad salespeople tend to interview well, right? And then they can't sell anything except for you not firing them every Friday, right? So one of the things that we found really quickly is that we have to have talent, right? How do you vet people? And whenever there's unfortunately, millions of people that are out of work and they're giving resumes, how do you vet them? How do you sift and sort through them? How do you tell the professional visitors, the professional interviewers from the people that are actually going to execute? So one part of the things that we do is talent, right? Because if you look at running a business, there's only a couple of things to focus in on. Talent. Do I have the right team to take me to where I want to be? And then that goes into the next part, sales. Taking that talent, putting them on a sales team. How do I structure it? How do I train the people to it? What technology stacks do I need? What can I use to leverage to increase my lift to have more sales conversations? And when I'm having those sales conversations, how can I be more effective at it? So we can either teach them how to do it, partner with them to help them to do it, or we can execute it on their behalf, right? So that sales side of things. And then the other part of that is scaling. All right, now that I have a great team and I'm able to sell, go to market, hit it hard, it's going to stress every system and process out there, right? To include communication. How do we maintain our culture? And so we really need to know, how do we scale these things? And there's all kinds of stuff out there, whether I'm doing Vern Harnish's scaling up, whether lean startup, whether I'm doing Michael Michalowicz clockwork, or EOS's, what's his name? Gino Wickman, EOS, all kinds of things. But okay, great. I read the book, but I'm running 1,000 miles an hour. How do I put this together? So we can come alongside there. So we really hit 3 out of the 4 areas needed for rapid growth or hyper growth: talent, sales, scale. The only thing that we don't do is a cash flow management, right? That's not us. You got to find a good person to do that.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I mean, employees and your talent are everything to a sales organization. So I guess how are you able to like pick out the really good performing reps, or just like how are you able to specialize and have that eye for talent?
Yeah, so we cheat, right? We cheat a little bit. One, we use assessment tools. So we really get the X-ray, MRI of, are they capable of selling, right? So that's one key piece. But assessments aren't 100%. So, but that's one data point. Second data point is we leverage a technology with on-demand interviews, right? So they can they'll do the on-demand interview, make sure that they align with our culture. And then if they align with the culture, they'll answer a couple of questions. We can see them. So we take out bias. It's the same question being asked the same way to all the people, so we can help to reduce bias, have a more eclectic group come in. They go through that. We can see, how do you perform on video? Because here's the crazy thing, and you probably know this because you shoot a lot of video, is you can have tons of energy and you're really ramped up. And then whenever you watch it, you're like, boy, I was pretty muted there. And it's unbelievable, the difference between video versus live. Mm-hmm. And so we get to see how they perform there with the assessments. And then it's a matter of this: do they have that growth mindset? Are they that 1% that they want to grow, that they know they're good today, but want to be even better tomorrow, right? So do they have that growth mindset? Are they going to look at a failure as a setback, a temporary setback, or are they going to suck their thumb, tuck and roll, right? So we don't want any of those, right? If I'm going to tuck the covers up over my head and roll back over, we can't have that, because we need people to be really gritty. So we're going to do them behavioral interviews. So between the video on demand interviews with the assessment piece, and then behavioral interviewings, testing for challenge, growth, change, that growth mindset, and are they gritty, coachable? Those give you a good idea. So 3 out of 4 sales hires typically are bad. We're able to improve that by about 50% or so. I'd love to say it's 100%, but a good 50 to 75% we can improve that.
So do you think those like green, very early, young, I guess, talent pools are good pools for sales roles?
100%. So 2 of my top performing people right now are brand new. They're coachable. The one guy I'm so very proud of. I'm just ecstatic over him, because he came on and I knew that he had it, because he had such a drive, such a determination. He was really at a low point. And he was like, you could tell, come hell or high water, I'm going to win. And he is the hardest working, the most coachable, the most hardworking and learning. So that's what you want in a green person. The other one, assessed off the charts. He doesn't have that same drive as the other one, but he can make it up from his natural skill sets. But what he is coachable. So because he's coachable and natural, he and the other coachable and hard worker, they're head to head. I mean, 0.0 3% of execution and efficiency in what they're doing, but their numbers of outreach to engagement are night and day difference. So it's really curious, but those two both are new. A lot of the seasoned ones you got to watch, right? I was just talking with a guy the other day. He had a person 27 years in the industry. I said, probably not working hard, probably not prospecting, but I don't know, maybe you have a unique one. And he goes, no, that's exactly it, right? Because when you're in the business so long, you're expecting your network to work for you, but it's not networking, it's not working, right? And I just keep talking to the same people, and I'm a professional visitor. So yeah, I would 100% say that you can get net new, but know what you're looking for, and you better be able to coach, mentor, and train them, because they're going to take some time. If you can't coach, mentor, and train them, you're not going to give them the tools to succeed, the time to succeed. Don't waste your time.
I think green candidates are the best, especially for like SDR roles, because like they're so green and like you can sort of shape them into whatever you want them to be. So I can't say enough good things about like those kind of candidates, I guess.
Yeah. And you have to be willing to teach them and give them time, because it will take time. And if you're not pouring your life into them or the management, KD, why am I blanking on his last name? Kevin
Dorsey?
Yeah, Katie Dorsey. I really have a ton of respect for him, because he seems to just pour his life into his team. And I think that's what a good leader needs to do. If you're not willing to do that, take the person that has a year or two experience, but then you have to ask yourself, if they had that year, 2, 3 experience, why am I going to go from an SDR, BDR role from one place over to yours? And if they don't have a really good reason for it, I'd be really cautious on that one.
Yeah, I could definitely see a lot of value for like an organization like yourself or like a training company to kind of come in and just assist and enable and sort of be like a consultant or like a third party in the realm of like sales development or marketing, just kind of being extra eyes and ears.
Well, that's our goal, right? And just to give you a sense of what we do, every single day, we have a whole half hour to 45 minutes dedicated for role playing, going over, hey, how do this is what we're hearing of this objection. How are we getting how are we getting around that? When you're entry, how do you get more on your pattern interrupt whenever you first start? How do you get past that? Then from pattern interrupt to curiosity statement, how are you doing that? Curiosity statement to call to action. Where is that breaking down? What are the ratios? And then coach to each and every single one of those steps, so we can get them better and better and better. Because the outreach to conversation ratio has gone down by about 4 to 5%, if not 6% post-COVID. So you're at 3 to 4% outreach to conversations right now. So when you get that conversation, you better be game on.
Ready.
If you're not, you're going to be spending a lot of money for no results.
Bryan, I've really enjoyed the conversation here, man. For anyone listening out there, maybe like a director of sales or an SDR listening that just wants to pick your brain further, where can they find you?
Yeah, so you can reach me on LinkedIn here. I spelled my name incorrectly, Bryan with a Y, so Bryan Whittington. You can also check me at ebsgrowth.com, so Echo Bravo Sierra growth.com. We have a new website coming out. Yeah, you can catch me there.
Bryan, I really appreciate you taking some time to speak with us today. I had a really good time with you on your podcast, which I'll link down below as well. But thank you so much. I'm learning so much from you all the time, and you're the best.
Thanks for your kindness. You're a good guy, Mateo. Thanks.
Sales Dev Squad, thanks so much for checking out this episode, and we will catch you all in the next one.